Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi. Joining me today is Anne-Marie Lurie, who is Chief Economist with the Calgary Real Estate Board and the Alberta Real Estate Association. Thanks for joining us today, Anne-Marie.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, it's been a rough ride for the residential real estate market in the city here in the past few months. Tell me where we're at right now and your sense of where the market is considering what we've been through.
Well, it's definitely improved in June compared to what we really saw at the height of the pandemic. So if we think back in April, sales activity in our city had fallen by 60% compared to the previous year. So we had really low level of sales. Since then, things are still weaker than what they were, but it's a big improvement. So as of June, our sales had declined by about 2%. So not as bad as far as the demand front goes. Now, at the same time, what we are really watching for as well is what's happening in supply. When we first went through the pandemic, we saw that new listings started to come off because it wasn't just people weren't buying; people didn't want to sell either. So we saw the impact on listings. We saw inventories come off. But at the same time, prices were still coming down. Prices were coming down before the pandemic, and what we saw happen is that pace of decline started to increase, and we're currently sitting at around 3% below what we were last year.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of different aspects of the market. Obviously, first is the sales part of it, and demand. What's been the most impactful thing on demand is the fact that consumers are weary and anxious and don't want to spend money these days.
That is definitely part of it. And I think that's what we saw in that pullback in April. No one's ever seen what a pandemic might do, right? So that automatically causes concern. You layer in the fact that there has been a significant amount of job loss in this city. So that obviously creating a whole other layer of concern, especially as we move forward. So there is a lot of risk and uncertainty right now, and that is likely impacting the demand in the market.
Okay, and let's talk about listings. And you did mention that there are more listings in the market. Last time I looked in June, the listings actually increased year over year, although the inventory is still down compared to a year ago. Are more people now confident, so to speak, at least wanting to put their homes on the market?
We are starting to see that. So just like we've seen that sales are, they have been trending up every month compared to the worst of what we saw in April. We're also seeing that those new listings coming onto the market is also starting to trend up as well. In part because you have to think many people may have been planning to sell their home ahead of this anyways and just decided to wait until, the worst of it's over. And things have changed a bit too. People are readjusting to a new way of showing their homes. And so we're
Yeah.
seeing a bit of that flow through now. And yes, the inventories are still lower, but it is a number that I'm watching closely.
Okay, and million dollar question. Obviously, everybody always talks about real estate prices. With the dynamic of supply and demand out there right now, like what has that done to the prices in the city?
Well, prices have been trending down. Now, in part, some of it is because there was a lot more supply than demand for several months. And that, again, continues to weigh on prices. Prices were falling before COVID hit. So keep that in mind. Like our market was oversupplied going into this. So that just so we've seen those prices come down. Now, one thing to note, there is a difference in depending on what prices we're talking about. So I look at the benchmark price because it reflects that same type of home year over year, and that price has declined. We're sitting currently about 3% lower than we were last year. We've seen some differences in the average price, and it's important to note it because especially over April and May, we saw that average price decline was far higher. That was about an 8% decline year over year. Now, some of that is because a lot of the transactions that were occurring in April and May specifically were occurring in the lowest price ranges. So that caused the change of distribution, and it pulled that average price down a lot more. So I think it's important to note that's where some of those differences are. But having prices come down really is in line with expectations. There is a lot of risk in the market. Now, there still is people who are currently buying and selling in this market, but given the risk and the concerns, as well as some of the oversupply conditions that we've had, that's impacting pricing.
Okay, so 6 months left really in this year, this horrid year that we've had in so many ways. What do you foresee for the real estate market for the final second half of the 2020?
Well, we do expect that some of these challenges will persist. So we do think that sales will generally remain weak as we move through the remainder of the year, in part because there still is a lot of uncertainty with what will happen. How quickly will people get back to work? And even if they are getting back to work, are they really in a position to be buying homes right away? So I think there is a lot of that risk on the market right now. So we don't expect sales to improve. And keep in mind that sales have been already low in the previous year, right? So it's not, we had almost adjusted to a new normal before all of this happened, and now I feel like we're going through another adjustment.
Yeah.
So we do expect that demand will stay low. I think we could start to see some of the supply levels rise as we move forward, and because of that, we expect that pace of decline in prices will maintain. And result in an average price decline of 3% for a benchmark price, decline of 3% over the entire year.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, Anne-Marie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was Anne-Marie Lurie, who is Chief Economist with the Calgary Real Estate Board and the Alberta Real Estate Association. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi. Thanks for joining us today.